Hey guys, welcome back here to today's edition of the Fishing Teacher, and really appreciate you guys checking out today's video and spending some time with me today. We're going to be talking about how to modify and correctly rig a trailer on a jig today. Now there's a lot of different type of jig trailers out there, but I've got a few key modifications in the way that I like to put the trailers on a jig. And this is really critical because what happens is when you put the jig trailer on correctly or you modify it correctly, it not only gives the bait better action, it gives the jig a lot more lifelike appearance, you get more strikes on it, you land more fish with it, and you can create different profiles with it based upon how you rig it. So we're gonna get into that in today's episode. I think it's gonna add up to some good fish for you guys. I'm also, guys, for get started, quick invitation, anybody interested in booking an on-the-water lesson with me, you can do that by going to my Facebook page, Randy Blaukat Professional Angler, or just shoot me a private message. These are on-the-water lessons I do that we can cover any technique that you want to. Do most of my lessons here in Missouri on Table Rock and Stockton Lake, so just check it out. Like I said, my Facebook page, send me a message. I'll get you the details with that. And also, guys, I'd like to invite you to please swing by, check out my Tackle Warehouse link. Tackle Warehouse has got a bunch of good 20% off sales going right now, so it's a good time to get stocked up on some equipment. I'll put that link in the description of the video too, so really appreciate that. Okay, guys, we're going to be talking about jig fishing today, trailers. Obviously, I want to talk, I don't know, I think I've talked about this before with you guys, but I want to show you the new Jig Color that we have, my Cumberland Pro lures. I know this is starting to sound like an advertisement, so bear with me on that. But anyway, this is the new color that I came out for Cumberland Pro lures, black with blue tinsel. We're going to have these at Tackle Warehouse pretty soon, but right now they just are available at the Cumberland Pro Lures website. I'll link that in the description too. My favorite summertime color there. Okay, guys, there's two primary trailers that I use most of the time. I have literally tried about every jig trailer out there. And my two favorite ones are a Zoom Big Salty Chunk and a Zoom Super Chunk here. These are my two ones that I use probably 90% of the time in my fishing. As a jig fisherman, as a jig angler, which I have been schooled by some of the best jig experts in the world that I learned my technique from, and I sort of, created my own version of it as well. I prefer these type of trailers over the curly tails by far. A lot of guys, especially the younger anglers, they use the curly tailed flapping leg trailers on a jig. But guys, I can tell you personally from somebody that has won 90% of the tournaments I've won in my life have come flipping and pitching a jig, and it's probably one of my top two favorite techniques. I highly recommend going to the chunk style trailers like this. I just think they get better quality bites and are a lot more consistent under a lot of different situations. So now, as far as when I use these, guys, there's not a definitive answer to that. I just have to experiment to see which one day in and day out they like the best. But I can't say use this one under this situation and use that one under this one. You just have to mix them and match them and experiment. But I do want to show you how I rig these and how I modify them, because I modify both of them. Now, first of all, the Super Chunk right here, this is how it's look. It just looks like the old frog chunk. The first thing that I do with them is I'm going to take some of the mass off the front. So see, I've clipped a little bit off there, and what this does, it gives the hook more penetration. It doesn't have as much plastic to go through. And then the next thing I do, I take off those real sharp defined edges. I round them off with scissors. So I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna take off any edge to it. I like the way that it makes it look a little bit better. So it's a little bit, off like that. And then see how this is like straight edge. I want to round this on the end right here. So I'm gonna take that little sharp edge off there like that. And this is my final product, about the way that I prefer to set it up like that. And then I'm just gonna hook it right, vary the end. What you wanna try to do is you wanna come into as close as the end as you possibly can, because the closer that you come into the end of the chunk there, the more pliable, the more action it has. So that's the way that I like to set it up there. And then my jig skirt, I trim it back. This looks pretty good right here. I want the main part of the chunk, quite a bit of it hidden right there, but I do want most of the legs to be seen out there. So this is the way that I set it up like that most of the time on the Super Chunk. on the big salty chunk. Now the super chunk's a little bit different. There's two different ways you can do that. The first way, you can thread it on. Just, you know, I'm gonna go straight up the middle like that. And I'm gonna thread it on just like that. And I don't do any modification when I thread it. I'd probably trim that skirt back a little bit right there. In fact, let me show you a little bit. If it's a little bit shorter, sometimes you gotta trim it back a little bit more. Also, when you're trimming a jig skirt, guys, don't ever just trim it straight across. You always want to trim it at an angle like that to make it, you know, different length strands. So that's the setup there. It gives you this type of a setup when you rig it, when you thread it up, it's a little bit more of a compact profile. That's one of my favorite ways to rig it. The other way that I rig the super chunk is if I want a longer profile where the bait's really long. I don't need any of this thick stuff here, so I come straight in and I'm gonna cut it off flat. It's like this. It's gonna be a lot thinner like that. And the whole purpose, again, of the thin is not only it gives you better action, but you don't have as much plastic in the way to get in the way of the hook. So I'll thread it on like that, and that gives me a longer profile. Longer profile like that, especially if I'm fishing for bigger fish, or if I'm in like super thick cover, a lot of times I'll use it like that. But I've caught a lot of big fish on that setup there. But guys, that's the two main ways that I fish it. It's pretty simple. One of the things about jig fishing and, you know, trailers in general is trailers, you can never underestimate the importance of a trailer in terms of not only the profile it creates, but the color. You really want to experiment a lot with color. Color and how you match it with your jig color has a lot to do with it. Sometimes I like a matching jig trailer and jig. Sometimes I like a contrasting one. It just depends what they want. But a lot of times I do use dyes with it. I try to create a different look. And there's not any real right or wrong, you know, system on this. A lot of it is experimentation, and it's like anything else. So the cleaner the water, the more natural hues, like the green pumpkins and watermelons you want to use, and the more dirty the water, the more, you know, solid colors like the black and blues, black and chartreuses. But anyway, guys, check it out. Again, I'll have my Blaukat Throwback jig, my Tackle Warehouse Blaukat Throwback jig for all my other colors, but that black and blues at the Cumberland lure if you guys want to check that out. So much appreciated, guys. Talk later.